The Chinese defense minister skipped the forum for the first time since 2019, sending a delegate instead. What's Beijing signaling about its commitment to regional dialogue?
One of the logical readings would be that the Shangri-La Dialogue or appearance at the Shangri-La Dialogue and having the bilateral meetings at the Shangri-La Dialogue is not of priority to Beijing right now, especially for the defense minister. But of course, there's no independent confirmation. There remains speculation. Some guess that there could be some sort of internal turmoil within the PLA, as we've seen with the recent purges of top PLA officials, military leaders. There is, of course, the possibility that the Chinese defense minister doesn't want to be put in a situation where he has to deal with US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at a time when negotiations between the US and the PRC are still at a fairly tense level, even though there's some abatement of the tariffs for the immediate period.
How are US China tensions being discussed at the Shangri La Dialogue this year?
So US China tensions are in the backdrop. They don't dominate everything. They do come out in certain areas. For instance, when the PRC talks about the South China Sea dispute or West Philippine Sea dispute it has with the Philippines, the PRC Beijing tends to blame the US for manipulating Manila, although there's no evidence for that. Now, at the same time, PRC also looks at the US as a force for instability in the region and accuses US alliance system for being destabilizing. The US, for its part, will talk about the PRC actions in the South China Sea, around Taiwan, and also in the East China Sea as, potentially provocative and potentially dangerous.
Taiwan is often talked about at these forums. What are the conversations regarding Taiwan this year?
There have been several conversations about Taiwan. One, drawing a link between security and stability in Europe with security and stability in Asia. So there's a comparison between what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening across the Taiwan Strait. Now, there's also been talk about how standing up against the Russians in Ukraine is a matter of democracy versus autocracy, rule of law versus authoritarianism. And that parallel has been made with regard to Taiwan.
We also saw a big European presence this year. What are the Europeans bringing to the table?
So the Europeans, in particular, I suppose this year marked by French President Macron's presence at the Shangri-La as the keynote speaker, is a indicator of Europe's attempt and sort of interest in being a major international security player. At the same time, the European presence also represents East Asia's efforts to branch out and look at more partners on the security front, in addition to the United States and to some degree for some states, China, in order to have, I guess, a more balanced portfolio in terms of security cooperation.